Hi! Recently, Blackmagic Design released a new version of DaVinci Resolve. Version 18.5, it's a public beta. We're on beta version 1. Before we look at some of the top 10 features in this, and this is my list of the top 10 features, I thought I'd point out that the minimum system requirements for macOS has changed. You need Mac OS 12 monitoring now, instead of Mac OS 11 Big Sur, which was the previous requirement for version 18.1.4. So you might want to be mindful of that. Time to upgrade your OS if you want to use this new version of Resolve. And that goes for Studio and the free version as well. Okay, we'll start things off here with some quality of life improvements. The first one we're going to do is to save a still from one of the viewers here. So as you can see right now, this viewer on the left is selected. It's called streetfeethd.mov. If I go up to File and say Export, at the bottom here we now have Current Frame Still. It's going to bring up a file browser. I've already navigated to my stills folder here. You'll notice the name it gives us is streetfeethd, followed by the time code of where we were at in the viewer when I told it to save it. So 0710 there, and that's what we've got here, 00000710. And we can save these as a variety of different formats here, but I'm going to save it as JPEG file real quick. And now when I bring up the Finder on the Mac here, we have a look. We can see it gave me a 1920 by 1080 still image, and it looks good. I use this sort of thing all the time for creating thumbnails for YouTube videos. In the past, I'd take a screenshot of the viewer. Now, if I come over here and I make this the active viewer, and we come up here and we do the export again, current frame as still, you'll see that it's now going to use the still frame from the active viewer over here. Main is our timeline, and our time code here of 064806, and it's replicated that same time code here as part of the name. So we can go ahead and export that. And again, we now have this still frame from the main viewer. We can see that it is again 1920 by 1080. All right. Next up on our quality of life is that we can use the index now, which has always been here, but we now have the tracks element of the index. We can change the order of the tracks by just clicking and dragging them. In the past, you had to come over here and right mouse click and say move track up or move track down. But now we can come over here to the track index and we can just drag them so I can change the order of my audio tracks. So now voiceover is the first track, or we can make it the second track like that. And of course the same thing works with the video tracks. I just made my main track the second video track here, and my motion graphics track is now the bottom track, which isn't what I want, but just for illustration purposes. All right, I'll put it back the way it was. It's also a very nice quality of life improvement there. I'll close that index out like that. So now we have quick export up here in our toolbar, so we don't have to go through a window to get to this feature. Normally we would have to go up to File, come down here to Quick Export and click that. And that would, of course, bring up our quick export menu. Another quality of life improvement is having Superscale in the inspector for a given video clip. If I was to click on, say, this clip here, I could turn on the Superscale function from here, and they've also added an enhanced version of the 2x version of the Superscale there. Normally, I'd have to go over to the media pool and find that clip here. Then I'd have to, we'll just grab this clip right here. And then I would have to go to Clip Attributes, and from within here, I would select Superscale and pick out whichever one I wanted from there. So instead of having to go through all that process, now it's right here in the inspector, which is very nice. We also have new cache management tool that's under Playback and Delete Render Cache, Manage Cache Data. So now for our current project library, in this case it's pan down, tilt left, we can see each of the projects I have defined and how much their render cache is taking up. And I can go ahead and then click on that and clear that portion of the cache. So that's a nice additional tool for us to manage all of our cache. Last item I'm going to talk about here is to select all clips under playhead, and this will give us a vertical selection of the clips that are underneath the playhead right here. And to get to that, we go up to Trim and select all under playhead right here. And now, as you can see, it just selected those clips that are right underneath my playhead. So that's also another very nice additional feature. Next up, we're going to look at the multi-merge node. This is a new node added with the beta, and you can access this node by typing MM into the Tools menu. You bring up that with Shift to Spacebar. You can see multi-merge right there. I've already got one here, and you can input a whole bunch of different elements into it. Unlike the regular merge node, you're not restricted to just 2 inputs. In testing, I stopped merging elements into it when I got to 10. The manual doesn't indicate a limit on foreground, background, or mask inputs. I have 2 text layers, a background layer, and a fast noise layer. Of course, these all work just as they would with a regular merge node. You'll notice that on the screen right now, there are none of these elements being displayed, and that's because inside of the multi-merge now, we have a layer list with all inputs unchecked. Now we can reorder things by dragging them around like this. I'll put this background on top here, and I'll enable it, and boom! Now that's the element on top. If I put it down here at the bottom, same thing because it's overlaid on top of the footage. If we turn it off, we get that. Now, I actually named these. Their default will be a layer like layer 3. Just double click on one of them. You can rename them. Now, the other thing we can do is we can enable them like this. Turn off the background. Do that. Like I said before, we can rearrange their order, which gives us a Z space ordering. So front to back, which is very nice. So if you're used to a layer-based system like After Effects or something like this, you might find using this type of node to be a little more in keeping with what you're used to and allow you to work with that layered interface. Or if you just need a merge with more than 2 inputs, multi-merge is your friend. Okay, on to the next item. Blackmagic has also added some very nice new codec support. You can see here I have a WEBM clip inside of my media pool, and I can of course drag that down into a timeline and edit it just as I would any other clip. It's a very nice new feature. I can't output this into WebM format yet, but I would imagine they're going to add that in a future update. One of the things they added a few versions back was the ability to import MKV files, and now if we go over to our export here, we can see that we now have the ability to export MKV, which is a great new feature. A lot of times we get our content in both WebM and MKV formats, so the ability to read both of those is a nice addition. One of the other things they added was the ability to output an animated GIF, so you can select GIF as one option here, animated GIF as the type, and then output the clip as an animated GIF file. It's another very nice new codec enhancement. Next up is a transcription feature. I have a project here where I have the original BMD video here from Grant Petty from doing the announcement for Resolve 18.5. So if we were to drop it down here, you'd see NAB 2023 update, etc., and you can hear old Grant chattering away.
It's still a work in progress, but we'll be demonstrating them at the show.
So that's what we're going to use for this demo here. If I right mouse click on the video file here, down here we have transcribe audio. I'll click on that and start the process, and I'll edit out how long it takes because this will take a little while for it to finish transcribing as the clip is pretty long. Once it's done, we'll be right back. Once the transcription is completed, you'll get this transcription window here. We have a number of different controls we can go over. If you click on any of the words in here, we'll jump to that point in the video, as you can see in the source monitor here. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, because you can actually edit the video by using the transcription. So if we look over here, we have some controls for controlling the size of the text. We also have a high contrast mode that you can set. This is the export option if you want to save it as a file. Let's go ahead and name it and save it as a text file. Down here we have create a subclip, and currently this doesn't work in beta. I'm sure it'll be fixed in a subsequent release of the beta. We have markers here, and what these markers will do is if we set a selection in here, we can come down here and we can say mark it, and boom. Now you can see that became a ranged marker inside of our source viewer here with the in and out points. We can also come over to the other side over here, and we can add it to the timeline if we want, like that. We can do an insert or an append, however we want to do it. These are our playback controls. I'll set my start point at the top here and click play, and it will play back just like this.
I'm Graham from Blackmagic Design. I wanted to give you a very quick update on what we'll have for NAB this year. Now, most of the new products are still a work in progress, but we'll be demonstrating them at the show.
Boy, Grant sure talks fast. As you can see, that will just go ahead and play back whatever you got wherever you set that highlight. You can also set the marker color here if you didn't want blue, which is a default. The nice thing about transcription for me is it's great when I create tutorials. I can go ahead and do a live recording of the screen and just do my dialogue with all of my hemming and hawing. I can transcribe that and create a script out of that and come up with a much more polished result. It's very nice for things like that. Okay, next up is automatic subtitles. Resolve will auto-generate subtitles for us, which is a huge help, especially with YouTube. So I'm going to grab this BMD video up here, and I'm going to put it in our timeline, and I will just insert it for now. That'll do. Now we're at the end of it. I'm going to hit the home key to go to the beginning, and then I will come up to timeline, and we'll go to create subtitles from audio right there. We have a few options when we do this. We can set the language, which we have one option right now, which is English. It's going to be great when they add more languages here. We can set a caption preset. We have teletext, Netflix, and subtitle default. I'm just going to take subtitle default. We have max characters per line. We can set that value right there if we want, but I'll take the default of 42 and I'll say go ahead and create. Now, just like doing the transcription, this is going to take a little while, so we'll come back when it's done. And we're done. As you can see, it's created a subtitle track up here. I'm going to make this a little bigger. It's named it the default of subtitle 1, and all of our subtitles are in here. Let's have a look at how well it did.
I'm Graham from Blackmagic Design. I wanted to give you a very quick update on what we'll have for NAB this year. Now, most of the new products are still a work in progress, but we'll be demonstrating them at the show, and there's a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Now, a few days ago, we launched some new Video Hub routers. We couldn't really build the old ones anymore. We had some parts issues with it.
So as you can see, it does an incredibly good job of translating the audio to text for us. Obviously, I would change the color of the text or modify the text in some fashion to give it a little more contrast for use in this clip's background. You can go right in here and edit these just as you would with the regular subtitle elements. It's just that now the application has generated those subtitles for you. It's a very slick feature, something that Premiere's had for a while now, and I'm really glad to see that they've added this to Resolve. Alright, we're going to get on to the bonus item, which is Universal Scene Description. Blackmagic has decided to add support for universal scene description files inside of Fusion. This is a huge update. This really enhances the 3D capabilities of Fusion, so we're going to take a quick look at that. I wanted to point out before I jump into Fusion here that if you built things inside of Blender, for example, we'll load up a scene here that we built for a customer, you can export this. Coming down here, I can export it as a universal scene description. What this will do is it will bring in all of the objects in the scene in their places and all of their textures. What it won't bring over is cameras and lights. But other than that, it's going to bring everything else. Previous to this enhancement, you could bring over individual objects from a Blender scene, but you could not bring the entire scene over like that. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to use a different scene. I'm going to use this kitchen set. You can see it has an extension of USD. Since my timeline has no media yet, when we switch to Fusion, we have no media in or media out here. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our media pool. We're going to grab the kitchen set right here, and that will give us a media out. I'll turn off the media pool again, and we'll put this one up on viewer 1. Like I said previously, this machine is pretty slow, so bear with me. This kitchen scene is a USD file that was created by Pixar. Pixar, by the way, are the folks who make the USD definition. They came up with it in the hopes that it would provide interoperability between different 3D apps, and it's been widely adopted in the 3D industry now. The kitchen set is a free demonstration USD scene, and that's why I'm using it here. I'll have a link to it in the description so you can download this. It's pretty small, and then you can go ahead and play around with it. You can select the different elements that are in here. You can also take this into Blender or modify it if you want to. You can see that we have nothing up in viewer 1 over here. If I try to connect the node to the media out, it won't let me do that. If we go over to the effects here and we go to tools and we do a drop down on tools, down towards the bottom here we have USD. This will show us all of our USD tools that we currently have. We can add a USD camera. I'll do that. Had I used the Tools menu with Shift Space to add the U camera, it would have added a U merge node for me, so I'll add that manually now. Now we have a U merge, which is a USD specific merge node. This is still beta, so this part of the beta is actually fairly buggy. Play around with it at your own risk. Again, I would not use this beta version of the software in a production environment. I'm running it on a test machine separately. Okay, all of the disclaimers out of the way. Just like with a 3D scene, we need a renderer. We have the U renderer here. I'll bring that in and I can put that into media out there. We can put our merge node right here. Right now it's just using the default camera lighting that Fusion creates for a given 3D scene. I'm not going to add a light because these lights are super buggy and I don't want to crash my system here. You can see now we have something over in our other viewer here. It's not very interesting to look at, so we'll move the camera so we're getting a better look at things here. Move it up, and you can see we can keyframe this camera and move it around, do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. This is a pretty huge update for this software. It's very nice, like I said. I'll leave a link to this Pixar screen here in the description. You can download it as a free sample and play around with this at your leisure. As one last added bonus, I thought we'd look at the new Superscale setting that was added in Resolve 18.5 beta, and we can see right here we have a Superscale that I've got turned on for this clip here. This clip was shot in uncompressed RAW on the original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, giving us 12 stops of dynamic range. I shot all of this foliage because there's a lot of fine detail in here, and that's where we're going to really be able to see the difference with this sort of enhancement. Originally, we had 2x, 3x, and 4x, and they've added 2x enhanced in the 18.5 beta, so we're going to have a quick look and see how well that does. I've already rendered this out with regular 2x enhanced, and no enhancement, just the regular HD. So we'll have HD and 2 different 4K clips. I brought these frames into Photoshop so we can pixel peep them. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. I'm going to turn off our enhanced layers. We have our base HD layer right here, and I'm going to turn on the regular 2x, and there's a slight difference if you look right around here. I'm not sure how well this will come out on YouTube. There's a slight difference in terms of clarity. Now if we come up to the enhanced 2x again, I can see a slight increase in clarity right there. Now it's time to really pixel peep this. We're going to zoom in on these trees right here. Now one thing to pay attention to here is if you look at the outer edges of this bit of foliage here and around these edges, you can see some kind of garbage noise. This is what's called macro blocking digital artifacts. So if we turn on the regular 2x Superscale, we can see that it cleans up all of that macro blocking, so we now have a nice clean edge. It also made it a bit sharper, so you can see if I turn it off, the macro blocking returns. Turn it on, and it's gone. And it's a little more clear. Now let's compare that with the 2x and the 2x enhanced, and we can see there's a little bit more clarity and detail that's added with the 2x enhanced. It's not a huge difference, but you can especially see if you look right around here, you can see that added detail and clarity coming in right there. So we get a little bit of improvement in the superfine detail, especially when we're looking at this branch area right here. You can see that gets cleaned up a bit and we get some more detail there. So that's pretty nice. Now, one of the things I'm pretty sure this won't do for us is clean up any sort of chromatic aberration. If we zoom in on this willow tree right here, we can see there's a fair amount of chromatic aberration around these bits here. See this little bit of color fringing around here. So we'll do the regular Superscale 2x, and as you can see, it cleaned up all that macro blocking and it gave us a little bit of clarity. Now we'll look at the enhanced 2x, and again, we get a little more clarity, no macro blocking, and we still have basically the same amount of color fringing with the chromatic aberration. It doesn't really correct that. It does add detail into the image and it cleans up all of that edge macro blocking, so that's pretty nice. And indeed, the 2x does a better job than the original 2x, so definitely an improvement there. All right, we're going to wrap things up here with my final comments. There's only one other element I want to talk about here, and it doesn't have to do with new features, but it's about switching to Resolve more than anything else. I'd studied editing under Richard Chu in the 90s. We were editing film and using a Moviola back then. In 2005, I made my first short film and I shot it on digital. Our camera was a Sony Z1U and we shot the film in HDV format, an early form of HD that we could record a mini DV tape. There was no solid state recording back then. To edit the resultant footage, I bought a copy of Adobe Premiere and a copy of the Adobe book on how to edit using Premiere called Classroom in a Book. I spent about a week going through the book and learning Premiere. It was an excellent book. I went on to edit all of my subsequent projects using Premiere. Over the years, I would curse Premiere, but there was nothing about it that was a real deal breaker for me. Avid was far too expensive, and Final Cut Pro required a Mac, so those were not options, and I plugged along in Premiere. By the time 2012 rolled around, I had upgraded to version CS6. I had also purchased a license for DaVinci Resolve from Blackmagic Design for $1,000. This was before they lowered the price to what it is today, but even at $1,000, it was well worth it. At that time, Resolve was just a color correction application. You had a media page, a conform page to assemble the clips for correction, the color page, the gallery page, and the delivery page, and that was it. In 2013, Adobe's Creative Cloud had been out for about a year, and I was still happily plodding along in CS6. By late 2013, you couldn't buy Premiere without subscribing to CC and paying a monthly fee. I was not a fan of what I perceived as a greedy cash grab by Adobe. I stayed with CS6 for the next 6 years. While not an ideal situation, I could not bring myself to pay monthly extortion to Adobe for the privilege of using their NLE. In 2008, I had switched to the Mac platform, and by 2016, I was running OS X El Capitan, which was the last version of the Mac OS that CS6 was compatible with. So I stayed on that version of the OS until August of 2018 when I bought a new Mac and switched from Premiere to Resolve as my NLE. Having used Resolve since version 9, by version 15 I felt they'd added enough NLE features for me to use it as my primary post-processing application. 11 years on and I still get updates to Resolve after my one-time payment of $1,000. Had I switched to CC in 2012, I would have paid upwards of $2,400. And that's just for the NLE, not for Audition or After Effects, just Premiere. I have no regrets switching to Resolve. It has its issues, as any complex software does, but I think I would rather give my money to a company like Blackmagic than Adobe. I have to tip my hat to Blackmagic. Every year they enhance this product with an amazing set of updates that are free. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope it helps someone out there. Thank you so much for watching. It's greatly appreciated. If you liked the video, please click like, because that helps other folks on YouTube find it. And until the next video, take care.